Hello, good evening, and welcome to Normal Island Live. I hope you've all had a gorgeous week in the sun, but it's time to get down to business. My name is Alyssa Gucci, and I'll be joined on this fine Friday by none other than Curtis Daly. How are you?
Wow, I tell you what, it has been sweltering, hasn't
It
it? I mean,
has.
even this morning, the weather was supposed to dip, and now it got really hot again. So, I mean, I've enjoyed it, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, climate change. But I'm happy to be here on Friday. This is our Fridays now. You're hosting, I'm guesting. Yeah, Fridays are
No, I
good.
think it's going to be a good show. So, without further ado, should we get into it? Remember to like the stream, make sure you're subscribed, and if you want to support us, then you can go to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work. Make sure to get involved in the comments as we love to read out your thoughts at the end of the show. But for now, let's get into our first story. Being dubbed as the lost generation, recent figures have shown that over 1 million young people are not in work or education, the highest figure in over a decade. A new report by former Labour Minister Alan Milburn has found that this level of youth unemployment is costing the government £125 billion a year. Milburn warned that without urgent action, the number of young people who are NEET, that refers to 16 to 24-year-olds who are not in education, employment, or training, will rise by 2031 from 1 in 8 to 1 in 6, affecting 1.25 million young people. In the foreword to the report, Milburn says he doesn't buy the rhetoric that this generation just don't want to try, saying, in a survey carried out for this review, 84% of NEET young people said they want to find a job, education, or training. I do not accept the caricature of a generation that is not interested in employment. I do not accept that mental health is simply an excuse, nor do I accept that the answer is to tell young people who are struggling simply to try harder. These are myths, sometimes cruel ones. Young people are not to blame. Institutions that should have provided opportunities to them are the ones that have failed. Naturally, this story has got the older generation's tongues wagging, ready to shit on the younger generations at any given opportunity, as demonstrated in this clip from Matt Allwright.
What Alan Milburn is saying there is they want to work. You're an employer. What do you find when they turn up to work for you?
I've been looking forward to this emergency. I've been really looking forward to
Alan
it.
Milburn's there. You're
I'm
shaking your
telling you,
head as you're
Alan
hearing him
Milburn,
say.
they are lazy. They are absolutely lazy. Let me say, what was really interesting about what he says, it's all right talking to young kids and saying to them, do you want to work? Yes, I want to work. But has he spoken to people like us who employ these people? Because I could tell you some phenomenal stories about how a lot of these kids are not prepared for the world of work.
OK, what is the mindset with which they come to work for you?
The biggest problem is this, is that they were sold this lie, go to university, get an education, and that education is then going to guarantee you a job for life. And the fundamental, vital thing that they have not got is that in order to get good employment is that you have to demonstrate that you have the right attitude. I never look at people's qualifications, never. I look at whether they've got the right sort of attitude, the attitude to be flexible, the attitude to do what it takes, the attitude to think outside the box. 9 times out of 10, that does not sort of happen. And let me tell you something else, it's really important. If I look at the children brought up in this country compared to children from immigrant families, whether that is from India, whether from Africa, whether they're from Australia, they have a totally different mindset towards work. So
What have we done to them?
The parents.
The report found that there are 1.6 million less low to medium skilled jobs in the economy. Vacancies in hospitality have halved in the past 4 years, and young people are taking up apprenticeships have also fallen by 35% in the past decade. But while the number of vacancies in these sectors is falling, entry-level roles that are seemingly perfect for young people trying to get their foot in the door, this type of work is also usually precarious with unsociable or unstable hours and low wages. The report also spoke of rising mental health issues amongst this age group, showing a direct link between mental health conditions and economic inactivity. Over the past decade, the proportion who say they are NEET due to work limiting health conditions has increased by 70%. The proportion of disabled NEETs citing mental health as their primary condition has almost doubled to more than 4 in 10. Among disabled NEET young people, anxiety, depression, neurodevelopmental conditions and other forms of distress are no longer peripheral factors. They are among its defining features. 1 in 5 or 20% of all NEET young people report a mental health condition, more than double the share in 2012 when it stood at 7.7%. It's also worth noting that this age group was aged 11 to 18 during the pandemic. Speaking to the BBC about the current welfare system, Milburn said, "For young people who've never been in work, the benefit system can't just be a safety net. It's got to be a springboard. It's got to provide more opportunities for people to get work experience, to get a first taste of a job." Addressing the government directly, he said, "There are no easy solutions, guys, none. They are all hard, and you've got to do the proper analysis, you've got to do the proper data, and you've got to do the proper structural changes." Ah, yes, because the government really loves to put in the work when it comes to welfare. The second part of Milburn's report will be issued in the autumn, along with a report on disability benefits by the Social Security Minister, Stephen Timms. In response to the report, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said, "Clearly, we need to do more. We will now work with Alan on what more needs to be done. I'm pleased with some of the measures we've already put in place and coming on train next month." Which, as usual, is a completely vague non-answer from Keir. Now, Curtis, less jobs and a workforce with increased mental health issues. What's your take on this report?
I thought it was a pretty good report from Alan Milburn. He didn't do the knee-jerk reaction that it's lazy people or people pretending they have mental ill health, or even he's quite clearly come out and said the data doesn't support that immigration is a problem. We're going to talk about immigration in a second. That guy on our Wilfred on that TV panel, we have such clowns, don't we? I mean, we are doing a disservice to people when we're trying to convey information and to get the facts out there. People are going to switch on GB News and they're going to put out their guff. And then we've got Channel 5 putting a panel together with this guy basically using personal anecdotes, saying, well, don't worry about the economy, right? Don't worry about the lack of jobs. It's just lazy people. It's the same old tired bullshit from the older generation to the young generation. There is a, I would say, systematic hatred of young people in this country. Started with millennials, and now it's filtering down to Gen Z. Interestingly, they're calling this the lost generation. This is the second lost generation. The original lost generation is our generation. We are the first generation where we are worse off than our parents. And now that's continuing. So every generation has usually been materially better off than the previous one, apart from us. And nothing seems to be changing. And part of the reason why nothing's changing is because we've got idiots like Wilfred on TV, Wilfred, whatever his name is, saying, oh, it's just individual behaviour and not a systemic issue. He also contradicted himself, okay? He first starts off by saying, it's lazy people, they don't want to work, and then he uses personal anecdotes, no data. He then says, well, people being told that you go to school, you go to university, then you get a job. Right, so it's either lazy kids or kids have been told the wrong thing, because it's absolutely true that there are people my age who have done the quote-unquote right thing, which is to go to school, work hard, put yourself in debt, and go to university, and you will get a job at the end of it. And that's not happening. How is that the kids' fault? But this guy is simultaneously blaming people's personal shortcomings and then says, oh, it's an issue with people going to university. Look, there is a systemic problem here, which is that we have a lack of jobs. And it's not just the lack of jobs, it's the kind of jobs that are available. It's, it's precarious work. It's low wages, low hours. There's no career anymore. Our parents' generation, grandparents' generation, you could work for one company your entire life. You can grow with the company, you can work up, and you will have good pay and conditions. But now, because of a neoliberal economy, which is a race to the bottom, the only kind of jobs are out there are those that are not even full-time. I mean, even for me, when I was working in retail, I was desperately wanting a 40-hour work week, and they couldn't offer that, despite the fact that companies are making record profits. Then you've got to factor in AI. There are retail companies out there, again, that offer 8-hour week minimum wage jobs that use AI to screen people. Kids today have absolutely no chance when you're being screened for AI when your job is a sales assistant. Okay? It's a job, it's an entry level job. We've all done this job, and yet you're competing with AI. It's crazy stuff. So I thought the report was very good. It's very thorough. I've not read the entire thing, but we've skimmed through it. Interestingly, though, Alan Milburn was a champion for privatization and PFI. I hope he's self-reflected on that, given that this economy is in complete tatters. But ultimately, what we need to do is, I think, a redistribution of wealth and power. And you might think, what's that got to do with jobs? Well, the knee-jerk reaction from many commentators is when there's a lack of jobs, it's to bring in policies that are favorable to the employer. Oh, well, the reason why there's not enough jobs is because taxes are too high, wages are too high. And we're stuck in this doom loop in which we want to make things better for the employer, so they'll apparently create jobs. Then when those jobs don't appear, the response is, well, we better cut taxes and cut wages. And we're in this cycle, okay? For the last 40 years, productivity has increased, but wages haven't. We've cut taxes. All right, yeah, there was a national insurance spike, and we can talk about that in a second. But overall, corporation tax, for example, has gone down. So why are we doing the same thing over and over and over again? It's because people seem to still think in this myth, that rich people are job creators, are wealth creators. That's not the case. If you have a workforce, I mean, look, Henry Ford understood this. They call it Fordism. Okay, I'm not saying he was a good guy or anything, but when he was, owner of the factory, he understood that if his workers couldn't afford to buy his products, i.e., Ford cars, then how are you going to bring in customers? And this is something that we have not really grappled in the mainstream, which is that if people don't earn enough money, how are they going to keep your businesses profitable? How are they going to go out and spend money? So once we reframe the economy in a way in which it's about demand, not about, just rich people giving jobs to people, then we can finally have a real critical analysis of the economy. And that's why we need to have redistribution. Because at the moment, inequality is at an all-time high. The economy and policies have never been more favorable to business owners and the wealthiest. I mean, maybe small business owners are not included in that. Again, I could touch upon that in a second. But certainly big business, and yet there are still no jobs or pay is low. So clearly, simply saying, well, we need to reduce wages and cut taxes isn't working. Neither is blaming young people, okay? People, our generation and the generation younger than us, Gen Z, we're depressed. Quite frankly, we have a mental health crisis. Part of that is because public services have been slashed. Try and get yourself a therapist, a one-on-one therapist. That takes a long, long time. People's mental health conditions get worse because there's no proper intervention into people's lives. There's also the fact that we had COVID. COVID was a major signifier for an increase in mental health. I mean, we were a little bit older, but for those who are age 16, 17, 18, the real youth of your time and are stuck indoors, that's not good for your mental health. And since then, what have we done? What kind of deal have we given young people? Oh, Keir Starmer will say, we just need more training places. It's really tinkering around the edges. And some Labour MPs are just saying, we should just have work there. That's not going to work. We need to entirely overhaul the economy. And we also need to understand that we can't have an economy in which people can work full-time and not have a living wage. We need to entice people into work. You don't do that by cutting benefits, by the way. You make sure you have good quality jobs. A minimum wage should be able to give you the basic standard of living. And in order to do that, you need stronger trade unions for collective bargaining.
Let's touch on welfare for a minute, which you've kind of already started to talk about. But obviously, it needs a complete overhaul. That's something that Alan was saying a lot in his report as well. That the system is broken, the system does not work, it does not support young people in the way that it needs to, whether that's from a mental health perspective or, once they do find themselves in benefits, it's also Like, he was talking about how quite often people who go on benefits then end up getting stuck in benefits because there's not enough to help people back into the workforce, especially for young people and that kind of thing. But do you think that it's likely that we're going to see this happen in the current Labour government? Obviously, his full report hasn't been published yet, which I'm assuming the second part of it will maybe have a bit more of an outlier of what he actually thinks needs to happen, because to say that it needs overhaul is a bit vague. But even, regardless of kind of what it says, do you see this happening in the current Labour government?
No, no. The only welfare reform this Labour government is interested in is cutting benefits, cutting disability benefits, cutting universal credit. That's all they're going to do. Because the zeitgeist of when there are too many people on welfare. I mean, too many is kind of a relative term, right? How many is too many? But we do have a crisis of youth unemployment. It's over 1 million. That's not good. But the zeitgeist is, well, welfare's obviously too generous. And again, it's the doom loop. It's like, well, too many people unemployed, therefore we cut benefits. And that doesn't improve anything, so we cut benefits even further. I'm going to suggest something that might sound like an oxymoron. I think part of the solution of getting people into work is to increase benefits. Now, a lot of people, maybe not on this channel, but maybe if you're someone who's not left-wing, watching this might be like, Curtis, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Like, isn't the problem that people are on welfare and you want to increase welfare? Yes, I do. Look at many European nations like Denmark, for example. Denmark has lower unemployment. More people are in work. And guess what? They also have higher welfare payments. So there is no correlation between level of benefits and unemployment. Now, of course, the right-wing media, and it's not just the right-wing media, it's the entire mainstream media, they would say, welfare spending's out of control, we need to lower it. Why is that not the same for Denmark? I'd argue that actually people are caught in a doom loop, in a poverty trap, because benefits are too low. If you have benefits that is just enough to maybe eat once or twice a day, and by the way, the level of benefits in this country is so low that people can't survive, but for some people that could just about get by, how does that get you into work? You do understand that getting a job costs money. You're going to need new clothes, new shoes, maybe you need a suit. And guess what? In 2026, you need access to the internet, you need a smartphone, you need a laptop.
Transport.
And if you don't have these, transport, for example, if you don't have these basic things, how are you going to get to work? I know it's an anecdote, but I'm sure this is true for many people. Years ago, I got a job in a hotel, and I had no money, like nothing. I could barely even get to work. So obviously, you have a cut-off point. Sometimes you can wait up to 6 weeks before you get your pay, a month and the cut-off point. So I had to wait 6 weeks before I got my first pay packet, and I couldn't get to work. So I had to ask my boss, can I get an advance just so I can show up? And that's not very common. Most companies won't do that. And there's an expenditure there which people need to have. So giving people the level of benefits which is not enough to maybe just enough isn't going to cut it. You need a buffer. You need enough money to pay for your lunches. You need enough money to get to and from work if something happens, an emergency. And that's why the level of benefits in this country is not only cruel, it is so illogical. So that's why I would argue we need to increase benefits. We need to make sure that people have basics, like a laptop. I mean, everything's online. We need to have, I would say it was called broadband communism when Jeremy Corbyn suggested it. Free broadband. Why not? I mean, we're in a world in which we're so interconnected. The internet is becoming almost like a basic right. So if we don't invest in people, how do you expect people to get into work? You can't. But of course, the corporate media, the idiots in power would never think of it that way. They'll just say, oh, well, we just need to cut benefits.
There was also a really interesting part in the report. I don't have exact figures to hand, but it essentially said that children that grew up in households that claim benefits and essentially were in poverty were more likely to have mental health conditions, and also are more likely to go on to claim benefits themselves. So there's just this endless kind of cycle that needs addressing, because otherwise there will be no improvements.
You've also got people on universal credit in work. I don't know the percentage now, but there was a big TUC report that showed a couple of years ago that 40% of people on universal credit were in work because work doesn't pay. So the idea that we've got to cut welfare to get people into work when there are people who are already in work and work isn't enough. Yet, maybe wages are too high and or taxes on the rich or employers are too high. No, it's crazy. It is absolutely insane. This is a fundamentally broken economy, which started with Margaret Thatcher. What we're seeing now in this report is a result of Thatcherism. And for some reason, we are listening to those who destroy the economy. The Thatcherites, or those that think like her, we're listening to them because we have this really weird idea that the experts of the economy are business owners, those who are wealthy, those that are rich. They are not experts. They don't know what they're talking about. They're talking from a class perspective, and they're promoting policies that help them and their friends in their class, but they're not an expert. And for too long, we've listened to rich people, and it hasn't worked. 40, 50 years, and this Bombshell report has completely exposed the type of economy we have.
Let's go on to the next part of the story. And I'm sure none of you are surprised that there has been another wave of anti-immigration rhetoric following the report. Some are blaming immigration for the crisis of youth unemployment. The Young SPD said this: a labour market afflicted by the latest migration wave in British history, brackets the Boris wave, was bound to make entry-level and part-time jobs scarce for our generation. We shouldn't have to be sending hundreds of applications to get an interview. Total mismanagement. GB News also gave their verdict, and you won't be surprised with what they said.
27 migrants from outside of Europe are being hired for every one British young person. That's according to new analysis from the Centre for Social Justice. And yet today, it seems to me that Labour grandees have set out a report blaming them, the British kids, for not being able to get into jobs. The gaslighting by the far left and globalist ideologues continues, doesn't it? They want you to blame your children while they import millions of low-skilled migrants from outside our country, suppressing our wages, hemorrhaging our GDP per capita, and taking jobs that should be going to your kids and your grandkids. While 1 million young Brits are described as NEETs, not in education, employment or training, costing taxpayers £125 billion a year, Milburn claims there's no evidence. Migration is a primary driver of this crisis. What a convenient blind spot for a report that refuses to face the numbers.
Alex Armstrong mentions it in that clip from GB News there, but this stems from a counter report from the Centre of Social Justice claiming immigration is the cause of youth unemployment. They said the crisis in youth worklessness is being fueled by mass immigration. The number of non-EU workers aged under 25 on UK payrolls rose by 355% since January 2020, while the young British workforce grew by just 0.3%, according to think tank the Centre for Social Justice. CSJ analysis of new HMRC payroll data shows that the number of non-EU migrants on payrolls aged under 25 rose from 82,000 in January 2020 to 370,000 in December 2025, an increase of 290,000. Over the same period, the number of UK national under 25s on payrolls increased by just 11,000, while the number of under 25s not in employment, education or training, NEET, surged by almost 200,000. Don't let the name fool you, though. The Centre for Social Justice is a centre-right think tank and was set up by Conservative MP Ian Duncan Smith. But to contradict the think tank, Alan Milburn, the author of the Youth Unemployment Report, said that immigration was not the reason.
We found no evidence that there is a link between levels of migration and higher levels of needs. Employers are going to be offering jobs to young Brits before migrants for a very simple reason, that there's a bigger pool now of unemployed, not in education and employment Brits than there are migrants coming in. So honestly, the equation has changed. So I think, you just got to get this sort of couched in the right way, because honestly, it's one of those issues, it's a blame game issue. We just sort of blame immigration as the problem. It isn't. So I think that is the right way to frame it.
Curtis, I have a feeling what you might say, but is immigration fueling youth unemployment?
No, it's not. That clown on GB News saying that, oh, but the problem is immigration, and Alan Milburn came up with a report that said it's not to do with immigration, and his response was, oh, he's gaslighting young people. If this guy read the report, Alan explicitly says the fault is not of young people. It's not because they're lazy. It's the system, it's the economy. So he's not blaming British people for this. And he's found no correlation between immigration and lower levels of employment. Now, the think tank, as you pointed out, the Centre for Social Justice, is a centre-right think tank started by Ian Duncan Smith. I had a read of it to see, where did they come up with the correlation? What they've done is essentially stated two facts or two figures, which is that employment for Brits has gone down, employment for immigrants has gone up. But correlation isn't always causation. In fact, in this case, it really, really isn't. They didn't have any other data to suggest that the two were linked. They're not actually. First of all, when it comes to young people not being in work, the report spells out that's because of mental health issues. So it's not the fault of immigrants that young people in this country are suffering from mental health. Yet this so-called think tank suggests that's the case. They also don't mention anything about the sort of jobs, because you can't say that levels of employment for Brits and for immigrants, it means it's linked. If you can't demonstrate that the same people are going for the same jobs, if they're competing for the same jobs, and not just that, but if you have a British person and an immigrant who has the same quote unquote level of skill and experience, and that person lost out to an immigrant, those are signifiers to suggest maybe higher amounts of immigration could be linked to higher unemployment for British people. But they didn't do that work. They literally just took two numbers and went, oh, it must be immigration. And that was it. That was the worst report I've ever seen. That's not a report. That is the journalistic level of what GB News is, basically. So why is immigration not linked to unemployment? What people miss, I think, when talking about the economy is they believe that the economy and jobs is finite. They think there's a finite amount of jobs, okay? And the more people that come to this country, the more people are fighting over the finite amount of jobs. That's because they have a very surface level reading of how the economy works. Economies expand and contract, okay? That's why they call it economies of scale. States expand and contract. Have you ever heard of the argument that, well, immigrants coming over here put a strain on public services? Well, they don't. Why? Because migrants who come here put more into the system. They pay more into the system than they take out. If they're working, that's higher tax receipts. So yes, there will be more people using public services, but there's also more tax receipts to spend for more people. So you can look at Denmark and say, well, they have less amount of people. Their economy wouldn't be any different to ours if we had the same policy. Some people like to say, oh, Denmark and Sweden, all these Nordic countries, they have better economies because they have lower levels of immigration. No, it's because the policies are different. It's because they have stronger trade unions. They have stronger collective bargaining. The amount of people in this country, it's all relative, okay? Yes, you have more people in this country, but more tax receipts to spend more on public services. No one also talks about the demand side of immigrants. So when immigrants come over here, again, as they put more into the system, because most of them are working, not claiming benefits, the overwhelming majority who are claiming benefits are British people. Therefore, immigrants are very, very demanding in terms of spending. So when they go out and spend money, that adds to the demand for businesses. As I said earlier, when people have enough money to spend into the economy, businesses make more money, they make more profits. That's what's happening with immigrants. So immigrants coming over here creates more jobs. That's what I said. It's all relative. So there is not a finite amount of jobs in this country. They expand and contract. And the reason at the moment why we have not enough jobs to go around is simply because companies don't want to invest. They want to, in a capitalist economy, the CEOs want to spend as little money as possible to make the most amount of profit. I don't know if you've ever worked on a shop floor in retail or if you worked in a bar. The amount of times that you've been there in that situation, it's really, really busy, and you're thinking, we need more staff. But you don't get to make the decision. You're just a number on a spreadsheet. The CEO gets to make that decision. Well, he would rather workers working at overcapacity all of the time because they get to save on labor costs, even though it's probably better for the customer, for the worker, and maybe even for the overall profits of a particular store if there's more people. So if you've got one member of staff and you've got 5 to 10 customers, maybe investing in that extra member of staff could mean that they could speak to more customers and maybe bring in more money. But of course, when it comes to capitalism, and when your job as a CEO is to generate as much value for shareholders, you're not thinking long term. You're typically thinking, year to year, how much have we spent, how much have we brought in? It's all about quick profits. So that's why, because we leave the decisions to the rich people, that's why we don't have enough jobs. And of course, because wages are so low in this country, that demand is also low. So once again, we need to redistribute wealth and power. Ordinary people need to have more money, and we also need to have collective ownership. We need to start having more democracy in the workplace, because the experts of a company are those that actually do the work. Again, I'll refer to working in retail. If you're working on the shop floor, that person knows more about that job and that particular store than the CEO at the top. Again, the CEO is just looking at the spreadsheet thinking, I'm going to punch in some numbers. Whereas the person on the front line knows, we need more staff, we need this, we need that. So if we had the actual experts making the decisions, we'd also have better outcomes. But that's a democratic workplace, i.e. socialism.
Well, it's actually mad because I feel like the right wing and GB News in particular will literally blame immigrants for absolutely everything. Like, I actually reckon if there's like a hose pipe ban this summer because it's really hot and there's like no rain, I literally think they'll somehow find a way to like blame it on immigrants. And it's really frustrating because they will just skew the figures to fit the narrative that they want to
Well, they often
push.
use a think tank called the Center of Migration Control. The name sort of gives it away. And lots of right-wing press and GB News have cited this as the gospel. It's very, very anti-migrant in its sentiment. But as Lewis Aaron has done some deep dive on it, the Center of Migration Control, their numbers are basically fudged. And the person who started that think tank was a member of Reform. Like, there's a political agenda there. So, but you know why? I mean, we don't need to say it. There's a reason why corporate media and billionaire-owned media talk about immigration, is because they don't want to talk about inequality. They don't want to talk about the rich not paying their taxes. They don't want to talk about wages. In terms of small businesses, though, like, small businesses are also facing a burden. That's true. The national insurance hike was obviously a burden. And I actually think for a good economy, and the left wing should be making the case for tax cuts for small businesses. But beyond that, taxes are not the main thing that's holding people back and businesses back. Small businesses are subject to the same oil prices, for example. So when it comes to bills, when they shoot up, businesses have to pay for that. They're also subjected to rents. They're subjected to commercial rent. So if you want to help small businesses, you want to make sure you cut out the middleman. So abolish landlords, have the state not just rent out housing to people to live in, but also state owns commercial properties to keep rents low for small businesses. That would go a long, long way. Renationalize our oil. So we can artificially bring down prices. These are huge expenditures that small businesses have to deal with. And guess what? The right-wing media and GB News, who say they care about businesses, who say they care about small businesses and entrepreneurship, right? They never talk about that. They'll talk about taxes. And the reason why they only talk about taxes is because they want to manufacture consent to cut taxes across the board, i.e. for the wealthy. That's where they're going. That's where they're aiming for.
Well, let's go to our next story because it will touch on some things that Curtis was saying at the end there. We've heard many different takes on the Alan Milburn report, but this one takes the biscuit. Libertarian Reem Ibrahim said this. More than 1 million 16 to 24-year-olds are not in education, employment, or training in Britain. This is not a coincidence. It is the direct result of government policy. We should abolish the minimum wage, abolish the Employment Rights Act, and reverse the national insurance hike. Reem Ibrahim's solution to the unemployment crisis is to make workers poorer. A race to the bottom where the minimum wage should be scrapped along with workers' protections. It's worth pointing out that she works for the Institute for Economic Affairs, a right-wing libertarian think tank that opposes government taxes and regulations. Who funds them? Well, we don't know exactly. They are quite shy about telling us who their donors are, but the Tufton Street-based organisation did admit they received money from the oil giant BP. 2018, the think tank admitted that it had received funding from the oil and gas supermajor BP every year since 1967. IEA spokespeople have also been publicly critical of the government's net zero target while advocating for the continued exploration of fossil fuels. Takes money from oil companies, critical of net zero. Funny that. Many businesses have also cited the minimum wage increase and increase to employer national wage contributions as another reason for the increase in youth unemployment, despite Milburn and the report stating otherwise. So Curtis, what do you make of Ibrahim's solution to youth unemployment?
Reem Ibrahim is wrong about almost everything. She, as you pointed out, she works for the IEA, the Institute of Economic Affairs. It is a libertarian think tank. Libertarians have absolutely no clue about anything. They're someone who live in their own theory, but they can't apply their worldview to the real world, to reality. So it's Thatcherism, neoliberal economics, which is, well, unemployment is high, therefore, if we're nicer to businesses, therefore people are going to employ more people. Richard Tice said something similar. He suggested that the minimum wage should be cut for young people because that was his idea of getting young people into work. And as I've pointed out, once again, the rich, the CEOs, they are not the job creators. So if they're not the job creators, why are we making lives better for them in order to create jobs? That's not what happens. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself, but it's true. If you have more investment in people, if people have more money in their pockets, they can go out and spend money. That's a multiplier effect. Once you do that, you'll have more jobs. But this top-down approach, this neoliberal agenda that we've had for the last 50 damn years, people are arguing for the same thing. Now, funny to point what you were saying about cutting the minimum wage, right? If you cut the minimum wage, what do you think is going to happen to the benefit bill? So as I pointed out earlier, there are many people who are in work who are also on universal credit. Because wages are already too low, the state has to subsidize employers who don't pay people enough. The government is literally stepping in to allow businesses to pay people so poorly. So if Reem Ibrahim says if we just abolish the minimum wage, what do you think is going to happen? Okay? You can have more jobs, maybe. I mean, there might be a slight increase in jobs, but what does it matter if you're getting paid £2 an hour? You're still going to be using benefits and the benefit bill is going to go even higher because employees don't pay people enough. That's why we need collective bargaining. And more importantly, because Reem Ibrahim, she's a libertarian. She is against any kind of state intervention. Libertarians literally want to get rid of the state. That's why she's like, get rid of the minimum wage. Not because she thinks it particularly works. I mean, maybe she believes it, but her perspective isn't come from whether she thinks it works or not. Her ideology is, I'm just against the state. So she wants all regulations gone. She wants all taxes gone.
Absolutely wild. Like
that's what libertarians believe.
That is what I was going to ask. It's like I almost want to I need more context to that tweet. Not because I think it's a good idea, but it's okay, so what does that look like? You get rid of minimum wage, you get rid of all these other things that she was saying to get rid of. What does that actually look like?
Libertarians believe in a world in which they think the state is anything run by the state or the government is authoritarian. And markets and private industry, that's all freedom. Like the way you ask her.
So each individual business essentially should just set their own like wages, rules.
Well, she and libertarians think that the free hand of the market will sort itself out. The reason why we have such a bad economy, why wages are low, whatever, is because there's too much government bureaucracy. The government is
That's
involved
mad.
in the economy too much. That's what they think. Which is why you ask a libertarian when you critique capitalism, she will tell you it's not capitalism, it's corporatism. And it's like, no, corporatism is a direct result of capitalism because monopolies happen under capitalism. And what Reem Ibrahim doesn't seem to understand is that governments can step in to break up monopolies. There's something called antitrust laws and anti-monopolization laws. They have it in America where, states can block mergers, for example. If you see one company, another company merging, sometimes, I don't think it's used effectively enough, but sometimes governments can step in and say, look, there's too much consolidation of power, therefore the state steps in. If the state pulls itself back and monopolies happen, that is a natural occurrence under capitalism. Capitalism breeds monopolies, which is so ironic when capitalists say, well, we love the free market, we love competition, yet capitalism hates competition. Capitalists themselves hate competition. They love a planned economy. Do you think the CEO of a particular company wants competition? No, he wants to make sure he can buy up all the competition so no one has anywhere else to go. That's why monopolies happen. That's why retail shops, they'll buy each other up because if people have nowhere else to go, the profits are guaranteed for you. So capitalism absolutely hates competition. And libertarians believe that we should get rid of all kind of government. That is literally all kind of laws, which is ironic. So when you ask a libertarian what their views of age consent, they dig themselves in a hole because they're like, well, exactly. We have laws. We have to intervene. And you just extend that with the economy. Reem Ibrahim constantly talks about abolishing the NHS because she seems to think, oh, if we let the market do everything, then it will somehow sort itself out. For 50 years, we've had that level of thinking. Not only has the market pulled away, the government pulled away. I mean, they haven't decreased spending, but they've, haven't intervened in the economy. They've also privatized public industry to allow, the private sector and firms and shareholders and CEOs to get even more richer, that we sold our public institutions and sold it and put it into the market. How has that worked? We now have public services that are fucking screwed. We have shit in our waters and we're paying so much money for transport. So her worldview, her libertarian and neoliberal worldview is absolutely deranged. It's absolutely deranged.
That is a perfect way to end that point. But before we move on, it's 2026 and we really want this year to be big for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put us on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio and for our contributors to be paid for the work we do. Your support over the years has been amazing and we are ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for 99p. Thank you so much. So moving on to our final story. It seems that Tucker Carlson is having some kind of woke epiphany. Note that is sarcasm. Let's take a look.
I'll never forget, maybe 10 years ago, you had this head of the Labor Party who was, an old leftist, old kind of pro-Soviet leftist. I didn't have much in common with him. I never really thought about him. But the one issue on which he was kind of different from, the people who paid for the party was on Israel. He was skeptical of British support for the state of Israel. And I've never seen a man slandered like he was slandered. Now, again, it's not my role to defend him. I'm not British and I'm not, an old leftist. But that guy was basically driven out of public life. And after that happened, the Labor Party just kind of swung into alignment with the Conservatives and with reform. And basically the entire British political establishment is on the same page. Don't talk about Gaza. Israel's our closest ally. Shut up, Nazi. Am I imagining this?
No, you're portraying it exactly as it was. And I, I'm not a politician. I've got no political agenda. My role, I believe, is to bear witness to what I've seen out there. But it seems very, very clear to me that the weaponization of anti-Semitism is rife through our society.
Yes.
And is being used to shut people up. And, you know, I've got to know Jeremy Corbyn quite well in the last 2 or 3 years. I've shared platforms with him.
I was referring to Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah. And having spoken, I don't believe there's an anti-Semitic cell in his body. I think he is passionately supportive of the Palestinians, and that is what his motivation has been. He tried to pass a bill through Parliament to get a tribunal to investigate what's been going on. It was clearly turned down. He ran his own independent tribunal to which I contributed my evidence as well. But there was evidence from a whole host of people. It's a publication worth looking at. And it speaks volumes about the people who have witnessed what's going on out in Gaza and are desperate to get the truth out there, what's really going on, and describing how the attempts to shut them down have been unacceptable.
So he's finally agreeing on something that those on the left have believed for years, that Jeremy Corbyn was slandered for his defense of Palestine. Now, why is it Tucker Carlson is only just deciding to come out and say this? Well, in recent months, Carlson has done a complete U-turn in his support for Donald Trump, even apologizing for misleading people, saying he feels betrayed by the current administration's actions in the Middle East, specifically the war on Iran. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Carlson said, "I don't hate Trump. I hate this war and the direction that the US government is taking. I feel betrayed." Despite being one of Trump's biggest supporters in the run-up to his second term and acting as an informal advisor to the president, Carlson has now become one of Trump's biggest critics, saying he has moved away from his initial America First promise and that Trump has been influenced by neoconservatives and Israel. Speaking to Israeli media last week, Carlson said one of his biggest issues is that the US funds Israel's military. "The reason that I have cause to comment on this and say that it's wrong is that I'm paying for it. There's no reason the United States should be sending any money at all to Israel, and particularly not to its military. If Hamas does something bad, it's bad. It doesn't justify Israel doing the same bad thing, nor does it justify the US. You can't kill people who haven't done anything wrong." He then goes on to say he believes Trump gave in to pressure from Netanyahu. On February 28th, the US followed Israel into this war, and the US Secretary of State said that there was no choice and that Israel chose the timing. This is the definition of control. So my question is, why did Trump let a nation of 9 million people drag a nation of 350 million people into a war that would change its future and that is bad for the United States? There is growing speculation that Carlson may even be preparing for his own presidential run in 2028. Author of Carlson's latest biography, Jason Zengerli, recently said, "I don't really think of Carlson as a media figure anymore. I think he's doing something very different. He's a movement leader. I think the Iran war sets up Tucker, especially if the war goes badly, really well to run for president in 28. He can hang that war around JD Vance's neck and Marco Rubio's neck, and he can say, I was against this from the start. I'm the true heir of MAGA." Now, let's bring Curtis back in. There's quite a lot to unpack there. So let's go back to his comments about Jeremy Corbyn. What did you make of that clip?
Well, of course, he's entirely right. Jeremy Corbyn, as we know, is one of the most, if not the most slandered man in history. He wasn't just criticized for his policy. He was called a raging anti-Semite. I believe a former conservative even said that Jeremy Corbyn might bring back concentration camps, and that multiple outlets said that Jewish people should be living in fear if Jeremy Corbyn became prime minister. Like, the level of slander and smears was truly disgusting, and it would be ignorant to say that it didn't make a difference. In fact, had we not had this level of smears against Jeremy Corbyn, he could have been prime minister. Tucker Carlson obviously realizes that, and he's realized it through Israel. We call him a broken clock because he said look, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the war in Iran, Tucker Carlson is absolutely right. And the reason why is because Tucker Carlson's kind of your classic conservative. For a long, long time, the political establishment have been littered with neoliberals and neoconservatives. And that's what MAGA are, by the way. Donald Trump and Marco Rubio and all those around him are neocons, despite the fact that they promised that the era of neoconservatism was going to be over. I mean, the way they campaigned in the presidential election, Trump's team, it was ends the forever wars. Kamala Harris is going to take us to war. We're not going to do that. Trump is going to be the most peaceful president. If you looked at Trump's track record the first time he was in office, he was extremely hawkish. He was extremely neoconservative. So I'm not surprised he lied. And of course, as president the second time round, he's been extremely neoconservative. Tucker Carlson is a classic conservative in which, when it comes to war, like, he's at least principled on that, which is why he can criticize and call out Donald Trump and the MAGA project for not being, for being pro-war, and being incredibly disappointed. And the same goes for Israel. Having said that, though, Tucker Carlson is not rehabilitated. He's still a very, very right-wing figure. It was recent, I think on a podcast, very recent, that he talked about the white genocide, which is a far-right conspiracy theory. And kind of probably could potentially go into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I'm not saying that Tucker Carlson did an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But what I'm saying is this guy is not to be trusted. He's not a good person or a good political figure, but he's saying something right about Israel and the war. And the big problem here is for the liberal establishment. The big problem is for the Democrats, for example, because the Democrats are so bought and paid for by the corporations, but also by Israel, that the fact that they treat people to their left, Democrats as well, to their left, who call out the genocide, who call out income inequality, harsher than their real, supposed real enemies, exposes them. Like Hassan Piker, for example. Hassan Piker has called out Israel's genocide for a long, long time, and the Democrats have spent a lot of time attacking Hassan Piker. In fact, they see Hassan more as an enemy than MAGA or people like Tucker Carlson. Or to be fair, they probably see Tucker Carlson as the real enemy because he's spoken out against Israel. But MAGA, for example, because at the end of the day, Democrats attacking Republicans and Republicans attacking Democrats, it's all a circus. They're all bought and paid for by the same people. They're bought by Israel. They're bought by corporations. And the Democrats would much rather lose to Donald Trump and other Republicans than to win on a left-wing ticket. Because if you're a Democrat, you're a corporate Democrat, if you were to, if your party doesn't win government, you're still in a very good position. And the party machinery doesn't want to lose its donors as well. So they would rather keep on to their donors and keep preaching to people who don't want to listen about how Kamala Harris, it was her turn, almost kind of like Hillary Clinton. But they're not going to have a comprehensive economic plan and still apologize for Israel. The voters are going to reject it, and I think they know that, but they would rather lose than have someone like Bernie Sanders, who, again, I think he's not that good on Israel. I mean, he's better than probably most people, but I think he's still kind of a liberal Zionist. But at least he's called out the genocide now, finally, and he doesn't endorse Netanyahu. Like, I think he'd be materially better for for Palestinians than a lot of other people. But I digress. But what the Democrats are doing and the liberal establishment, they're almost goading people to be pushed into right-wing circles. Because if no one on the liberal side is going to call out the genocide, and the only person who's got a big platform is Tucker Carlson, what do you think is going to happen? People are going to flock to Tucker Carlson. And the danger is that they start listening to his other stuff. They start listening to his very, 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 very right-wing arguments. They might start believing there's a white genocide. And Democrats don't care. They are happy to potentially create a new generation of very right-wing people. They are happy for Tucker Carlson to influence younger people as long as the Democrat machine does not capitulate on Israel. Sorry, or does capitulate on Israel and doesn't reject corporate donors, because the machine, the Democratic machine, is still going to be protected. They're still going to be well-funded. But the danger here is people are going to get pushed into this. Same with Candace Owens. She's a very right-wing figure. I think she's a terrible person. I think she has awful views, but she's right on Israel. And right now, that's the thing they're talking about the most. And for those people out there who aren't that political, who don't know much about these people's views on other things, but are hearing Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson saying, wow, they're calling out the Israeli genocides, then people might listen. Especially when Tucker Carlson is now talking about a left-wing figure in Jeremy Corbyn. He's speaking about Jeremy Corbyn, and now potentially he could run for president. By the way, I think Tucker Carlson poses a real threat. I think he could absolutely win as president. 100%. You know, a lot of the media class like to think that Gaza is a fringe issue. They like to think that, oh, only the Muslim community cares about it. No, we all care about it. I remember a BBC, I think it's a BBC, it was a radio interview with Zach Polanski, and the interviewer said, is Gaza on the ballot for the local elections? And the media likes to be very disparaging and say, well, this is local elections, not Gaza. But speaking to candidates who ran for election in the locals, they told me Gaza comes up on the doorstep unprompted. It comes up all the time, regardless of who they are, regardless of what religion they belong to, race, gender. It comes up a lot. So if you've got a Tucker Carlson figure who's willing to defend a left-wing figure like Jeremy Corbyn, is willing to call out Israel's genocide and be truly anti-war, in which MAGA lied about, he could be extremely successful.
I think I agree with you there in terms of Tucker Carlson actually being a real possibility for 2028. I think he has, like you kind of said, he's clearly staunchly MAGA. He is incredibly right wing. That's not going to change, but obviously that appeals to, unfortunately, quite a big part
I
of.
wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't describe him as MAGA, because MAGA is a cult. Tucker Carlson is not in a cult. He's a, like I said, a classic conservative. I mean, he's more right wing than that. But MAGA is a cult. MAGA isn't anti-war, for example. MAGA isn't pro-free speech. If that was the case, then most of the base of Donald Trump would have turned on him. Donald Trump cancelling, not Jimmy Kimmel, the other guy, the comedy shows because they criticize Fallon, maybe Jimmy Fallon. One of these people, anyway. A subpoena has been sent to Hassan Piker. Like, Trump has been incredibly authoritarian, despite MAGA saying, "Oh, we love free speech," and Trump has been incredibly hawkish and has brought us into another war, the Iran war. And MAGA, who said before the election, "Oh, we're really anti-war," they haven't turned on him. So I don't think that Tucker Carlson is MAGA. MAGA is a cult. Tucker Carlson is his own thing, and which means he's far more dangerous, because I think the MAGA aura is actually losing, and JD Vance, who probably wants to be president in the future, I know you've got to hope now. There's also the fact that Tucker Carlson is an excellent communicator, because he's worked in the media. He worked for Fox News, now he's a podcaster. Like, he can speak to people as well, and I think that's a skill that should not be overlooked.
That's what I was gonna go on to say, is that he could potentially kind of swoop in and pick up these like lost MAGA voters that maybe aren't actually, I don't know, part of the cult like you're saying, but
I could pick up Democrat voters.
Agree with you know, Trump on a lot of things that he says, or at least the very right wing kind of section of American politics. But yeah, don't agree with the with this war. Don't like the fact that obviously Trump said that he was all about no new wars, America first, going to put American people first, and he's completely gone back on that. And clearly, you know, people are starting to see that he is very easily swayed. So I think Tucker Carlson really could, swoop in there and
yeah,
really
I think
speak to the masses.
I think he could pick up Democrat voters who refuse to turn out for Kamala Harris. I think he could win the overwhelming majority of independents. So I think Tucker Carlson has a real shot, which is dangerous. And again, if liberals actually cared about stopping the right wing and the far right, which they don't, if they did, the Democrats would put up a solid candidate. They put up a candidate who's willing to take on the billionaires, willing to take on the corporations, and willing to take on the terrorist state of Israel, which they won't do. So they're throwing the future to right-wing forces. They threw it to Donald Trump. It's crazy that Trump got elected again, but Kamala Harris was pathetic. They stifled their only kind of popular guy, Tim Walz. He was on a streak when he was calling Republicans weird, and then they told him, don't do that. And then he got cucked out by Kamala Harris and the DNC. And the Democrats are going to do the same mistake over and over again, because it's not that they haven't learned from their lessons. They know fully well. They know if they were to offer Medicare for all, no new wars, and no bowing down to Israel, they know that will be a popular thing. But they'd lose their donors and their connections, and they would rather lose than lose the infiltration of corporations in the Democratic Party.
Let's leave it there for tonight's stories, and we will bring in our producer, who tonight it is Sarah.
It is me. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, what a great show. Honestly, excellent stories, excellent analysis as per. So, how do I do this again? Sorry. So, super chat. So, thank you so much to everyone who's here. Thank you to Benji for gifting 1 Turn Left membership. Thanks, Michael, for being so consistent. So good to see you. Gifting a 10 left membership. We got 5 10 left memberships from Ollie. Thank you. And then Specs always coming in with a reminder, which is really useful, that everyone hangs out in the voice chat of the Discord. Sorry, my chair's really squeaky. The Discord after the show. Come join the community. Can a mod please post a link to the Discord? Thank you. And then Specs also gifted 5 10 left memberships on top of that, which is really wonderful. And then, sorry, just a few more. 10 from Antifa Vegan Boys, always really consistent. So thank you. We always see you. So thanks so much, guys. So wonderful. Let's go to the comments then. Just going back to the first story, so we're casting our minds back a little bit. Michael said, sorry that they don't want to work for minimum wage, maximum hours, and have no life. And this is literally it. Like, I remember I was in a conversation really recently, and someone was laughing at the term work-life balance, and they associated that with us, like the younger generation, that we're very big on work-life balance. And it's like, but I think actually we don't even get to enjoy or relish in a work-life balance, because a lot of our lives are just associated with work, and our value and our worth is
It's also
attached to our contributions in
It's also
society.
a crazy thing to say, because the boomer generation and older were obsessed with work-life balance. That's why they had strong trade unions to ensure that they had strong work-life balance. The younger
Yes.
generation doesn't have work-life balance. We're obsessed with the fact that we
Exactly.
don't have work-life balance, and we don't have the same as what the previous generations had. But they did something about it. They fought for it. So it's very strange when you hear that. Like, oh, we're obsessed with work-life balance. We're obsessed that we don't have it.
You know what's so
Yeah,
crazy as well
exactly.
is I feel like after COVID and like lockdown and all of that jazz, and obviously so many people either were furloughed or moved to remote working, is that we all kind of collectively was like, yeah, we really need to look after our mental health. We need to have more of a focus on work-life balance. Like, this clearly shows that we don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. We can have a bit more time at home. Output is still the same, etc., etc. And then like gradually over the years, it's just started to deplete, and work and jobs are forcing workers back into the office. Obviously, Nigel Farage said like we should completely do away with remote working and working from home. And then there was that CEO that was talking about last week with that the supermarket story, the CEO from M&S, where he basically says, yeah, we've got some like misguided obsession with work-life balance, and when you're on holiday, like you shouldn't really completely switch off, which is absolutely wild.
It
And
is
like this whole,
wild.
but like we just don't care about like burnout anymore.
No.
It's just like a factor of life.
Yeah, and I think even when they do burn out, they're viewed as feeble and weak, like, oh, so you couldn't handle a bit of hard work,
But we have
hard
like a real
graft.
disdain overall for like mental health, which I
Well,
think is why like this story about the the lost generation, and this over 1 million young people not in work, and a big part of that is mental health. And I know a lot of people are just going to completely dismiss that as, oh, snowflake generation, they can't handle a bit of hard work.
Well, they done it with Carla Denyer. Carla Denier's taken a break from Parliament due to burnout, and you've seen a plethora of those in the political establishment like, oh, she's work shy, what's she being paid for? And I pointed out that this is the exact kind of arguments we made about mental health, and yet today we would never make these arguments about mental health. But burnout is a very real thing, and some even suggest it was a middle class thing. Like, no, we all face burnout. It's not a class thing. You're not suddenly a different human being if you rise to the classes. So we can see how people's attitudes to burnout, because Carla Dania is suffering from burnout. It's a fucking real thing. It's a real thing, and they were all attacking her for it. Then I don't know,
awful.
Nigel Farage never being in Parliament because he's a little bitch for capital and he keeps getting funded loads of money.
Terrible, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. And then Nantang Asarasu would like to point out that 1/6 is the usual baseline for youth unemployment, as data shows since around the 2000s, minus 2008 and COVID. This is an intentional outcome of neoliberalism. So, yes.
Well,
Sorry.
unemployment is a feature of capitalism.
It is.
I don't think I mentioned it earlier. I was going to, which is that I think we need a federal jobs guarantee. We need a state job guarantee where there is a job waiting for anyone and everyone who wants it. That is paid well, that it has good benefits, and straight off the bat, if you're a tech worker or an engineer, just like that, snap of the fingers, yep, there's an engineer job for you provided by the government. What that does is it makes the private economy compete with the government. At the moment, we have a reserve army of labour, which is just unemployed people. And as Alan Milburn, I think he's going to learn the wrong lessons, because he said in that clip we showed earlier, where he said, don't worry, employees going to start hiring Brits now because there's a higher pool of unemployed people. Now, you might think that's a good thing. That sounds like a bad thing, because what he's really saying is there's loads of unemployed people, therefore we don't have to offer these people much because people are desperate. And that's what happens when you have a reserve army of labour. When you have a private economy, and then you have unemployment and that's it, it's a race to the bottom. If you have the state step in and create like federal jobs, then if there's a job going that's paid really, really well with good benefits provided by the states, you're going to choose that job. And then you've got employers like, how do I get people? I need people to work for me. So then they're going to start bidding higher. We need a race to the top, not to the bottom. So neoliberalism and capitalism, absolutely, it's underpinned with unemployment. You're never going to have like full employment properly under a capitalist system. I'd be very skeptical if we ever got to true full employment, which is good paying jobs,
Exactly. And then Michael said to you, Curtis, you need to get a proper job like being a landlord, Curtis.
Exactly. Being a landlord is a real job.
I have these discussions all the time, and I used to a lot more now, not so much, but just sorry, I dropped my AirPods, sorry. Sorry, I can't put my ear. You're asking me to slow down. But yeah, so essentially like landlords, the way that people bootlick for them and they try to justify to me when I tell them like give me one reason why I should be, why I should give you grace that you're a landlord. Like give me one good reason why being a landlord is good. And they always say, I provide housing. And I'm like, no the fuck you don't. Try again. Wrong. Anyway, we'll do a whole discussion on landlords one day and landlordism.
Because have we ever been on a show together to talk about landlords?
No, but I think
sparks will fly when that happens, right?
Maybe we should just tell all these 16 to 24-year-olds just to become landlords as well. That'll fix it all for them.
Literally. Oh god.
Landlord guys.
I can't stand them, honestly, little parasitic things. So, Becca said, a lot of people are underemployed too. They can't get the hours to take on multiple jobs. And this is a really good point. In rural areas, because buses are not frequent enough, people need a car to work, and some people can't afford vehicles or transport to get to work. Like, there are lots of barriers sometimes for people who live in certain areas, or like socioeconomic deprivation, which means that these things are a lot harder to deal with. So, yeah, Becca made a really great point there.
100%. And again, the rural economy is completely forgotten about here because immigrants often populate cities. So where's the discussion about rural communities in which immigration isn't as big of a factor? Oh, they suddenly forget that, don't they? It'll be back to blaming British people. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They're lazy. It's either British people are lazy or immigrants are to blame. You can have, look, pick your side.
Which one is it?
Brits want work and immigrants are stopping them from getting work, or they're too fucking lazy. Choose one. They're
Literally
both
pick one.
wrong, but at least you
Pick
can pick
one.
one.
So there's this video circulating at the moment where someone went to the United Kingdom rally, whatever, and this guy who's dressed in like this, what is it when they're dressed in the silver thing and they got the St. George's flag around them, like I don't know what it is, like they look like I don't know. Anyway,
Like
yeah, like a knight. I think that's what it is. Oh, I'm such a dum-dum. So anyway, then he was like, well, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous because look at your Uber drivers. Look at your Uber drivers. And the people who do Deliveroo, they're all foreign. Mohammed and Bilal and all this sort of stuff. And he was like, I look at their pictures and they come to my door and it's not the same person. And he was like, they are taking jobs from young British people. And I was like, what? Like they are so, I don't even know where they're getting these things from.
Well, the irony on that one is you can't take an Uber job from someone because they're self-employed.
They're self-employed, exactly.
You can literally just sign up to Uber
Create
and
a job.
you do it straight away.
Exactly.
So because they're not classed as employers, if you have your own car, you can literally sign up to become an Uber driver because you're self-employed. You don't have to wait for a job to be created. You've just essentially created that job because they take a cut of what you do.
Exactly.
So,
Same with
like this guy has no idea what he's talking about. You can't take
no
Uber
idea.
drivers' jobs because they are self-employed.
Exactly. he even
You
said,
could literally sign up to me one if you want right now.
He could, like, and this the guy did say to him, like, you know, that they're self-employed. I don't think he got it. He was
Oh,
like,
he did tell him, okay.
I order Deliveroo every 5 days a week, and I'm sick of it. They're taking their jobs, they're taking our jobs. And I was like, please pack it in. Anyway, then this is what Arthur said. Oh, sorry, Arthur. UC standard allowance is £424 a month. It is shit. On the laptop thing, Curtis, the job centre will supply you with one if you need it. They help with travel costs and can even pay for passport renewals. And I think that's just a really good, helpful piece of information that people might have wanted.
I mean, that could be true in cases, but I argue that people should be owning like a decent, nice laptop, not just one that's provided for. Like, I have no issue with someone get a fucking top of the range MacBook that costs $2,000. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care because, in fact, actually, again, personal anecdote, I was applying for a video editing job, and it required heavy video editing using After Effects and Premiere Pro for this YouTuber. She had like 1 million subscribers, so I was like, oh, I really want this job. I was using a laptop which would cut out. So if you had it on charge, after 10 minutes, it would cut out. So I'd have to save it every like 5 minutes. And then go back to it. And this is heavy animating and editing. You cannot do that. You'd need like a proper laptop to do it. But I had no money. I couldn't buy one. I needed that job to buy a decent laptop. So I was using this shitty laptop to try and do it. So I think like people should be given a fucking smartphone. People should be given a decent laptop. And then if people go, oh, we're immigrants and refugees got all this shit, which obviously is misleading, you're like, well, I think we should be giving more to more people.
Yeah.
Not taking away things from refugees. I'm like, no, let's give more to everyone.
Exactly. Give more. Stop punching down, for Christ's sake. Then Oliver Carpenter said, no one ever assesses the breakdown of the benefits bill. A massive amount goes to private landlords to help people to pay rent for a house that used to be owned by the government. Guys, wakey, it's true. Wakey.
I mean, landlords love benefits. They do, because it goes in their pocket.
Exactly. Just all the more reason to fucking hate them, man. So
landlords are leeches and they're benefits crunchers.
Literal leeches. They're on the dole. So Actual Intrepid said, a good point, Curtis. Penny pinching is all about cutting staff and making the others do more workload. I think people are really loving the rant. W rant from marriage causes divorce. Oh yeah, I remember this username. So jokes. Flow Snake said, I'm glad Curtis didn't do the reductionists. Carlson's just saying this because he's anti-Semitic. Yes, Carlson is a bigot, but his anti-genocide stance is way more nuanced than most people think, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, to be honest, I've not seen enough of Tucker Carlson to formulate that opinion, so I'm not going to sit here and say he is. Could be, I don't know, but I've not seen enough of him. And I'm not going to also lie and say what he's saying on Israel is wrong, because he's just flat out correct on it.
Yeah. That are really wonderful $2 donation, and this one's dedicated to our girl. Oh sorry. I fucked it. Our girl Alyssa. Alyssa is really good at this. Yes, damn right she is. She's so seamless with it. So seamless.
And like the more I do it, the more I'll relax into it and do a bit more back and forth and get some little jokes and stuff in there. But it's going all right so far, I think.
You're
I think you're doing
smashing it. You're
brilliantly.
smashing it.
You are smashing it. And listen, we bloody love you. So you're doing
Thanks,
great.
Kate.
But that's it for the comments, guys. Honestly, really, really great. Oh, sorry, another one.
So one more come in.
£2 from. Oh my
Wait.
God, they're back. They're
David
back.
K. Focus.
Yes. CPU now stands for Communist Processing Unit.
That is Kevin as a baby. So good.
Jokes.
You know what makes it even more funny is that he's not here. Like that makes it even more funny.
They always do it.
We've
It's so
created
jokes.
like a entire, I don't know, like characters from Turn Left.
Like
we've
you
got
have like in jokes now.
We've
You have
got
inside
pen.
jokes.
We've got
Yeah,
sort
the
of a
pen.
pen.
Oh, wait.
There's something
is
else.
this the pen?
Get off my pen. No.
Oh yeah.
No!
Throw it out the window.
Well, one day when we have a studio in which we're sat in the same like room, I'm
You
going to
can
make
keep
sure
that
you don't
pen
touch my
under lock
pen.
and
Yeah.
key, but right now, I got the pen.
Domestics. No, I'm joking. Oh my God, what a great show. Honestly, very, very happy to be
Really
here with you
enjoyed it.
guys. I really
Loved
liked
it.
it. And now I'm going to I don't know how to ever say bye. I guess bye, guys.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, thank you so much, Curtis, for being my guest once again. I hope you enjoyed being able to
Oh, always.
give all your
Always,
input.
always,
We love to
always.
hear from you.
Oh, no, I loved it. Fridays are, I don't want to say it's become my favorite because I don't want to be biased, but I'm liking Fridays. I'll just say that.
Fridays are fun. Fridays are great.
And by the way, it's your second ever show. You're a new member of Turn Left, another woman as well, because we want to have a better balance. You're doing a smashing job. Fantastic job.
Thanks, Curtis.
And I have to, sorry, I have obligatory. I have to promote our Twitch. Everyone's getting angry at us that we don't promote our Twitch. We've got like 4 followers on there. I think it's twitch.tv/Turn Left Media. Maybe someone can put the link in the chat because we're not even affiliated yet. I'm a boomer. I don't know how to do it. Despite everyone like, here's how you do it. We'll get there one day. Sorry, I'll let you end that out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And thank you everyone who tuned in this evening. Remember, we go live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 7:30 p.m. You've been watching Normal Island Live. Have a wonderful weekend and I'll see you next time.